us for a Case of the Mondays podcast. I'm your podcast host, Rameez Kaleem, founder and CEO of 3R Strategy. I'm joined today by Natalie Molina, Head of People Impact and a Senior HR Strategic Transformational Professional and with expertise in people management, diversity, equity, inclusion and belonging, as well as social value and sustainability. Today, we'll be exploring how organizations can move beyond a tick box exercise to genuinely creating social value. And how do we make gender pay gap reporting more meaningful for organizational change? Welcome to the podcast, Natalie.
Thank you very much for inviting me. Delighted to be here.
So before we talk about this in more detail, I guess for our listeners who might be new to this concept, what exactly do you mean by creating social value in an organization?
Yeah, it's a really broad question, and social value itself is such a broad topic. But social value is the evolution of what CSR was. And CSR had been around since the 60s, when organisations were forced to ensure they weren't polluting and they were offering employee policies, etc., etc. Social value is the next stage on from that. And it's about incorporating those values into the DNA of the organisation and moving it away from legislative into making real change and impact for employees. And it can be challenging as to how you create that. What surprises a lot of organisations when I start talking about this is they've already got initiatives in place. They're already delivering social value. They've already got workplace training exercises. They've already got work that they're doing in the communities for their charities. They've already got apprenticeships, and they're already delivering some real changes and certainly some sustainable and environmental changes. It's how you now start to provide narrative around that and start calculating it, and start measuring it, and start telling your employees about all these great things that they're already doing. I got involved a little bit by accident, I have to say. I didn't come across this as a topic that said, I must do social value. I had joined an organisation to work post-pandemic on hybrid contracts, on what the future ways of working post-pandemic needed to look like and how to incorporate hybrid working into day-to-day activity. And I was asked one day, a couple of months in, did I know about social value? And I said, I'm not really too sure what that means. I know about CSR, but even that, not quite too sure. And because this organisation that I work for was delivering a lot of contracts for government, for the public sector contracts and local government, there's a requirement within public sector that a value of the contract can be attributed to social value. And they were now ensuring that in the bid and procurement process, this was delivered. So I was asked to start looking into that for this organisation and start to draft what a social value policy, strategy, initiative, action plan, all of the above might look like. And from that piece of work, the business decided they needed someone looking at this on a more permanent basis. So it became incorporated into my day-to-day activity to deliver for this organisation as a whole. So that's social value in a nutshell.
So, I mean, that was also going to be my question around, how did you get into it? So it's like you said, you sort of accidentally fell into it.
Accidentally fell into it, but I really enjoy it because it's and I think a challenge with some organisations is, where should it sit? I am an HR professional, and I'm a purist HR professional in the sense of the word. And so we've decided in this organisation, it's heavily focused on employees and skills development. It should sit within the HR team, but there's a lot of crossover. So social value is also about our supply chain. So I work really closely with our commercial and supply chain teams to ensure that we're delivering the best social value within our supply chain. It also encompasses being stewards for the environment and making some changes in sustainability. And that was, I'm not a scientist either. As I said, I'm an HR professional. So I worked really closely with our teams that were doing that. And now that has folded into my day-to-day activity in looking after the legislative environmental reporting that comes in. And I've had to learn a lot along the way. So it's become really quite broad, and it does focus a lot on people, but it's got some other areas that I've had to learn along the way, in itself creating social value for my own development.
I mean, it's as you talk about this, it clearly sounds that you're quite passionate about the topic. And one thing I noticed when I was looking at your LinkedIn, that your title is Head of People Impact. And it's as a title, I guess it's slightly unusual as well, because you don't really see the impact piece at the end of it. Is that why you're so passionate about this topic? Because you think it's about having an impact in your role?
It is. It's influencing others to make some changes that they need. And I am passionate about doing that, but it's making real impact in people's working lives. So a topic that I talk about a lot is breaking down barriers to entry and barriers to employment. Small changes make those impacts. And I like to think that I spearhead the impacts in the organisation that I work for that make a difference in people's lives. And even just getting out and talking to people about employees about other things that we do, the charity work that we do, and offering volunteering days, that in itself makes an impact to people's working lives and actually provides a well-rounded approach to work, that it's not just about coming in, if you want it to be more than just about coming in and having your salary and going home. Some people just want that, and that's absolutely fine as well. But if you do want to get involved, here are the opportunities that are available for you.
Okay. And, when we talk about social value and you talk about impact, a lot of people will be thinking, yes, this sounds great, but how do you measure the impact? So are there certain metrics that you look at to say, yes, we are having an impact, or we are creating social value?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question about how it's all measured. There are several tools out there that organisations can subscribe to, and they can be a bit expensive. For me, that was the right thing to do at the time, was to subscribe to one of these tools available, which gives you access to a portal that you can track your measurement, and it creates a monetary value as a result of that. So you can say the value of my social impact is X amount. And that was really helpful because I was so new to the topic. And I needed guidance along the way. I needed ideas about areas to focus on. But it doesn't have to be, you don't have to subscribe to these, you don't have to pay monies for it. It's about understanding, I guess, the small changes that can make. If I look at, say, the supply chain, for instance, social value asks individuals to make a difference to small, medium enterprises, to charities, to micro enterprises. So by categorising your supply chain and working out what your spend overall, and then your spend in certain areas, you can then say, well, my supply chain brings in X amount in this area, which might also be an area that coincides with the government levelling up program, etc. You can then make a decision as to whether or not that's where you want to keep it. Do you want to try and increase it? Do you want to challenge the organisation that you work with, that you'll only work with SMEs going forward? You'll have a SME or a micro supplier first approach, where possible approach. Do you want to subscribe to the fast pay initiative, that you pay smaller all organisations within 30 days? All of that creates social value, and then you can measure the changes over time. 85% of our invoices were paid within 27 days, for instance. You can start measuring that and seeing what that impact might have. We used to have X amount in this area with SMEs, and now we've increased that by 10% to this amount. So it can get overwhelming to think about how you calculate it. And so I always recommend starting small, starting with 2 or 3. If this is the first time you're looking at social value, starting at 2 or 3 key areas, perhaps apprenticeships, perhaps the level of training offered to employees, and look at where's my baseline now? Where do I think I want to take it to? Where could I take it to? And let's just see what it looks like in 6 months and in 12 months' time. And start talking about it internally. Start telling your employees, we currently deliver 1,000 hours of training across our business, for instance. Next year, we want to make it 1,500 hours of training over the business. We're going to monitor it. Here's how it will be great for you.
Okay, it's as you were talking, I was thinking, oh, we should start working with you, because 27 days for an invoice to be paid is great, because I think these are the sort of things where you might not appreciate, but it makes a massive difference to particularly SMEs with things like cash flow, where having an organization paying after 60 days versus 27 days, these things have it. And it reminded me of I don't know if you ever listened to Diary of a CEO, or Stephen Bartlett was talking about how they are obsessed with making small changes, because these are the things that often get ignored, but they find that the reason that they stand out in the market is because they look at tiny changes, like the level of CTO in the oxygen levels in their studio when their guests come over, the music that they're playing when their guests are arriving, and all this. So they look at the small things, and those small things accumulate to have a massive impact.
Yes, you're absolutely right. The smaller things will lead to the big changes overall.
And you were also talking about you do things that create social value, and you can actually give a monetary value to it as well, saying this is what it's done. Can you give examples of some of those activities that you might be doing as an organization, or encouraging your employees to do, that are creating that social value, and you can almost give a monetary value to it?
Yeah. So because we do subscribe to a portal that allows us to monetize it, we can say, because of job creations, because of underrepresented groups in our business, particularly employing individuals with disabilities, our social value over the last 12 months is around £20 million. That's give or take, there or thereabouts. But there's a lot that goes behind that. In particular, some of the initiatives that we've brought in over the last couple of years is understanding what future work is going to look like, and how do we get ready for the new digital age, not just us as a business, but the employees. So providing a digital skills academy, a digital data AI academy that employees can attend to upskill themselves. And that has been, it's in progress at the moment, but that will be an initiative that employees at certain levels will have different expectations of the kind of data, AI, digital knowledge that they need. So someone who is working in an entry-level role may have different levels of knowledge and requirements to someone that's working in a more senior leadership role. And we make sure it's tailored accordingly. But what we're trying to do here is ensure that individuals, come our digital age that we're hurtling towards at a pace that is amazing, people are still going to be employable. We're not underskilling people, and therefore people won't be reliant on government support in order to survive. And that's what the core of social value was about, and why the government brought it in, is to ensure that there was less reliance on government support for individuals puts the onus onto organisations to ensure that support is there. So by having a digital skills academy, we will be able to track how many hours people have been training for, how many promotions perhaps we've been able to offer existing employees, the cross skill of employees, and then also underlying that is where I get really interested in is, and what does my diversity look like at that level? Have we now increased diversity and knowledge in more senior roles in our business? That's kind of stage 2. We'll get there, but that's what I'd like to be able to overlay on top of this. And all of that is measurable with social value. There is, as I said, we subscribe to a portal that allows us to calculate that. But even the raw numbers without a monetary value, without a pound value attached to that is really powerful to be able to say, again, 1,000 hours was delivered in digital skills, and actually we created 20 new roles as a result, and 50% of those are ethnic minorities, for instance.
Okay. I mean, that brings us nicely onto our topic, because you're talking about, diversity, you're talking about ethnicity, and gender pay gap reporting is something that's been mandatory in the UK for a while now. But it does feel like a lot of organizations do see it as a tick box exercise again, because it's a legal requirement. But also it is a legal requirement, but I think the level of compliance that's required, which is to report at an organizational level. So if you have, let's say 500 employees, what is the average male versus female salary is not really very meaningful data at the surface. So how do you approach this as an organization, taking into account the fact that, you are putting emphasis on social value? Does that link in any way in how you analyze or report your gender pay gap report?
It does. It brings us to more questions, if anything, at the moment. So it has been mandatory for all organisations that have got more than 250 employees since about 2017, I think. I would urge any organisation, even though it's not a legal requirement to report your pay gap, to still do a gender pay gap analysis, irrespective of the size. I think it's a really powerful tool to look at. But you're right, the numbers are a bit one-dimensional, and it is a bit of a tick box exercise. I think it can fall into that tick box exercise. It would be wrong of me to say it's a tick box exercise for everyone, because I think there are some organisations doing some great stuff with it. But for me, it's now come to the point, because I'm looking at underrepresented groups, to say, well, what do these numbers tell us? And there is a real difference between pay equality, equal pay, fair pay, and pay equity. And I think there's some real confusion around those two as well, that just because my median pay gap is really low, I've got pay equity. You don't. You need to look more into what those numbers are saying and look at the mean as well as the median as a whole, because a low median and a higher mean in your gender pay gap will probably highlight that you've got an issue in leadership, and you've got an imbalance in leadership roles between male and female employees. And so scrutinise those numbers in a bit more detail. Pull out the actuals is what I would say. Don't look at the averages. Pull out the actuals and see what it's looking at. And a really tough, really tough piece of work that we're undertaking in our organisation, but I have enormous respect for any organisation undertaking this, is to create your job levelling, your levels in the organisation, and the salary bandings that go along with that. And then apply your gender pay gap on top of that, and look, have you got issues within certain salary bandings? So yes, you are absolutely right. It is quite one-dimensional at the moment. It is reporting on what's needed, but organisations, including my own that I work for, will need to scrutinise more into what this is telling us. I think the hard thing is recognising there may not be a lot you can do. Even though you may see some enormous gaps, there may not be quick wins in this area. It may be about long-term process improvements. There may be discussions as to what your hiring and promotion practices look like. There may be real skills gap in your industry and in your function that there isn't diversity, whether it's ethnicity diversity or sex diversity, may not exist in certain fields, functions, job roles. So the question is, well, what are you going to do about it? How can you solve that? What could you put in place internally to address some imbalance? In some cases, it might be that women aren't feeling confident in applying for roles in a leadership position. So what can you do to put something in place to address that? And it will be, again, the small changes over time that will make a difference, rather than, of course, big salary changes will make a massive difference to people, but that might be hard for organisations to do all at once. So what are the small incremental changes that could be done? Acknowledge if there is a problem. Acknowledge that there is. Acknowledge that we're going to do something about it. Acknowledge it might take you 5-10 years to get there, but don't shy away from looking at those numbers.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it brings us back to the same point we were discussing earlier around the small changes, because sometimes we do see organizations thinking about making one or two, big adjustments, or, this person's leaving the organization, this is going to impact our gender pay gap in a positive or a negative way. But it's really helping optics, really. It's not really addressing the issue that the organization has. I think that sometimes the challenge, because you talked about pay equity in there as well, I do think the media sometimes creates this issue where gender pay gap is almost discussed in the media as like an equal pay issue. So you see, there's a gender pay gap of 10%. That means there's so much pay inequity, but that's not necessarily the case. You could have a 0% gender pay gap, but a lot of pay inequity. So like you said, it's something to investigate. And the organizations that are in the EU, you've got the EU directive coming in. Is that something that impacts you? Because that actually does require, from a legal perspective, to split it up, like you were saying earlier, by job grade and by level.
It will very soon, because the company I work for is parent company is EU. So we are in the process of getting ready to deliver those numbers, which is why we're going through the job levelling exercise. And it's why what I thought was going to be a really quick process is, we're now in September and we're still doing it after, commencing at the beginning of this year. It's not a fast process, and there's a lot of moving parts to it, because we're also linking it to things like succession planning and talent management, etc. But that's a different topic for perhaps another session we could do. But there's just because two individuals do the same job and are paid the same, which we expect, and many organisations will subscribe to that. Project manager, male and female, maybe some small changes because of tenure or because of, small experiences, 10 to 15% differences. But for the most part, you're a project manager, I'm a project manager, we get paid the same. That in itself is not pay equity. And I think changing that language and understanding that language, changing the dialogues and having meaningful conversations around that need to happen, because it's very easy to fall into the trap of equal pay and fair pay versus pay equity. Over the course of someone's lifetime, their earning potential is the same, irrespective of sex. So, what might happen in my instances of project managers is male and female may earn the same, they're doing the same job, they absolutely have fair pay and equal pay. But when you scrutinise the numbers a bit more, it might have taken the female 10 years to get to that point, longer than it has the male. So earning potential over the course of the lifetime, there's an inequity there between the two of them. And then you've got to fold in bonus, that might come as a result, pension gaps that might come as a result. Over the course of the lifetime between the two individuals, there is a significant difference in their pay equity for their entire working life. And that's kind of the next stage to really start asking more questions about, because we do have equal pay. It's fantastic. We do have equal pay in the organisation. Now's the time to start banging the drum about pay equity.
Okay. But I guess that on the other side of this, some people might say, if two people have had, different, even if in an organization, let's say you have two people doing the same role, and historically one of the factors that might be used in a job evaluation process, for example, might be years of experience, which is now being taken out because of things like age discrimination, because some people might be, regardless of gender, let's say it's the same within the same gender, one person is able to progress into a role within 3 years because of their development, and somebody else takes 5 years to build into that role. So how does pay equity then come into that? Because wouldn't you say that that's justifiable, or are you saying that those two should be equivalent?
Oh, no. I'm absolutely saying those kind of things can be justifiable. What we want to ensure, though, is that everyone has had the fairest opportunity in order to experience that themselves. So what is it that's caused one person to have a development that's been faster than someone else's, and provided the only reason why is not based on gender, then I have no issue with it at all. But in many cases, gender does play the biggest part in why someone has developed faster than others. So I want to scrutinise and make sure that we're not applying a gender overlay to someone's development and someone's career long term. And I don't have the answer about how to fix this. And it probably won't come in my working lifetime. Just talking to someone over the weekend about doing this and this topic, and she rolled her eyes and sighed and said, "Oh, I can't believe we still haven't fixed this now. I can't believe I'm now getting ready to leave the workforce and retire in a few years. And this was a topic when I started in the workforce." It's going to take time to make these changes. And I anticipate handing things over to the next generation to do, but to continue progress. And it's difficult, and there's no rule book, there's no instruction manual on how to get it right. We just know, if you look at from the beginning of this year, essentially women worked for free until the middle of February. Based on pay equity, women were doing the same job as men for free, just the way it works, in the way the salary earnings happen. And I don't think that's fair. So I think we need to find ways to reduce that. If it's 48 days this year on average, and it's 60 days for people over the age of 40, let's see if we can reduce it by 10% each year, or 10% in 5 years, if that's the better. Let's just see if it can be reduced.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's a complicated topic, and then over this you have all the other elements as well around ethnicity and disability, which if you one that's the intersection of that leads to even more possible inequity. So maybe this is something that AI will help accelerate and help us solve
maybe.
Before we retire.
Maybe. And it can be really overwhelming when I sit down and I look at a blank piece of paper of all the things that need to be done, all the things that need to look at. I feel completely overwhelmed as to what do I fix first. But I go back to the small things. Can I ask the questions about leaders in our business, and are they all earning a fair pay? Are they all,
Hmm.
where are my gaps and what do I want to do with that? Can I create a process to ensure we consider these 5 things? Can I create a women in leadership forum that individuals can attend during their lunch hour? Can I create something that's small that gradually can start to increase? So I feel I can have left a legacy of something small that made a change, even for one person. That's enough.
Okay.
I'd like to do
So,
it for more, but slowly, baby steps.
well, we, I'm sure we have some listeners who are listening to your advice, and let's say you have somebody from a smaller organization or SME that are thinking, well, we can't really invest in a tool or a platform, but I am interested in social value. What would be the one piece of advice that you would give them on what is the first thing they should do or how they can get started by looking into this?
I'd look at the social value model that the government has put out, because it has some really great themes and policy outcomes that you can say this applies to us but not applies to me, and take one of those themes and say, I can do A, B, and C under this theme. Create your baseline now and create a small action plan to improve it. And once you feel confident with that, you can do it on Excel. If you've got some great people in the business that can use Power BI to create you a bit of a dashboard, even better. But it's just understanding where you are now, where you want to be, and how are you going to get there. And that's when you start doing some research around it. And there are quite a lot of knowledgeable people out there that you can reach out. I also think bring your employees along the journey with you. Share with them that this is something that the business want to do. They've probably got some great insights to share, and you've probably got some people who can do some groundwork for you. The ground roots movement and bringing the employees along on the ride can have a really powerful impact. They can almost create your key themes that you might want to focus on, because they'll tell you what's important to them.
I was smiling earlier because of what you said, because we help a lot of organizations develop their reward strategy and their pay philosophy. And we say the same thing that you just said, which is, with a lot of work that we need to do, it is, like you said, about figuring out where you are now and then where you would like to be in the future. And then you can start to figure out how you get there.
Yeah.
So thanks, Natalie, for all of your advice and your tips. I'm sure everyone's going to find that really helpful. But before I let you go, I have to ask a question I asked all my guests, which is, what is your favorite film and why?
My favorite film is Dead Poets Society. And it was the first film I cried in the cinema seeing. Well, actually, I think my dad was quite traumatized. He took me to see Bambi, and I think I cried quite badly seeing Bambi at the cinema. But that I remember was Dead Poets Society, the first time I cried. And I think that end scene where the boys get onto their desks and show their appreciation, is what did it for me. And I think it's
Oh,
because...
Captain, my captain.
Oh, Captain, my captain, that's it. And I think it's this, don't be a sheep, be yourself, be bold, stand up, look at life in a different angle, and don't let people of authority tell you how things should be, is what resonated with me.
Okay. Yeah, that's a great choice. I have to say that is definitely one of my favorite films. I think everyone loves Robin Williams, and like you said, it's. I used to do some teaching on weekends, and I think teachers in particular love that film because it's around, like you said, trying something different to engage your students, but it's not that much different when, as an organization or as HR, you're trying to engage with your employees by trying to stand out, do something different. I actually started watching that film again recently, and it's interesting that you brought that up as your favorite film.
Yeah.
But thanks for all of your advice and tips. What is the best way for someone to connect with you?
I am happy to give you my email, and anyone that wants to reach out can email me directly. So that's perfectly fine. Or reach out via LinkedIn.
Great. Thanks, Natalie. Thanks, everyone, for listening. Hope you enjoyed the episode, and we'll see you again on the next episode of A Case of the Mondays.
Thank you.
Enjoy this episode? Join the Academy for free and have access to CPD certified reward training, quarterly reward community sessions, first access to salary insights reports, reward and benefits market data, and hundreds of free practical tools and templates.